Leigh is, I'm sure you have noticed, is the founder of Moss Law PLC. She has extensive experience in working with businesses of all types in all states of being, from startups through, I'm sure, through transitions. And on the flip side, when things don't go so well, she'll come back and she can help them through their bankruptcy and their financial issues. She's got beaucoup experience behind her, and also she's well known for being former president of the Women's Bar Association of Oakland County. No small feat, that's for sure. And she's been also recognized a couple times as Michigan Super Lawyer for excellence in the practice area of business and corporate law, an award given to only 5% of attorneys in Michigan. So I think we've got a lot to learn from Leigh. I'm looking forward to this presentation, and as soon as Brenda's ready to go with the screen sharing. All right, Leigh, we're going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brenda, did you want to pose that question that we talked about?
Yeah, let me just check now. We did have a poll opened up. Did everyone see the poll? If you're not seeing it on screen, go to the bottom and click on poll. It's anonymous, so we're not going to associate you with your answer, so don't worry about that part of it. You should have the ability, Leigh, to do a screen share. Let's test that out and see if you can do that.
Okay.
So at the bottom of your screen, you should see that green share screen.
Yes. Shall I go ahead and start sharing?
Yep, go right ahead. And I did start the recording, and I'm going to start the live stream on Facebook as soon as you start your presentation.
Wonderful. All right. And working on that. Okay. I think we're there. All right. I'm always happy when the technology works, right? So Stella, thank you for that introduction. I want to say first, good morning and welcome. I am Leigh Moss of Moss Law, and I want to thank you all for this opportunity to share my experiences this morning. The year, I'm sure we could all agree that the year 2020 was certainly eye-opening. It shed light on the fact that many business owners were not prepared to manage a business crisis. So I'm glad to be here to share some of my strategies with all of you. Stella gave me a great introduction, so I really appreciate that. I will tell you that I've been practicing over 25 years, and when I started, I was one of the only women attorneys that was practicing business law. It was not uncommon for me to walk into meetings with male judges, male opposing counsels, and the business owners were all male. So I'm thrilled as a practitioner to have seen the evolution of women in the last 25 years on the bench, in the practice of business law, and owning their own businesses. So it's great to be here. So let me dive right into our topic this morning. I'm going to start off with a quote. The Dalai Lama allegedly once said that, quote, tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength. So there can be no better way to approach our turbulent and tragic year of 2020 than to make sure that we learn and apply the hard lessons it has to teach us. So let's talk about how we can equip ourselves for a crisis in the future. I'm going to start our discussion by sharing a very interesting survey with you. In 2019, the accounting firm of PricewaterhouseCoopers conducted a global crisis survey, and they asked over 2,000 businesses whether they had experienced a crisis in the last 5 years. 69% of those surveyed said yes, and 38% said they'd experienced a crisis, 2 to 5 crises in the past 5 years. That was in 2019, before the global COVID-19 pandemic. So it tells you that a crisis of some kind is practically inevitable for all businesses. It's just a matter of time. So if you're running a business, crisis management is essential. They also asked business owners what type of crisis they experienced. And you can see from this chart that a crisis can take many forms. The most common were operational and technology failures, along with financial problems, which a lot of people experienced in 2020. But if you take a look, you might notice what's missing. A pandemic. The closest thing to a pandemic under this chart is maybe a natural disaster, but it was not anticipated in 2019. That wasn't in anybody's head at all. So it's clear from this chart that a crisis can take many forms. And we know that even in, quote, normal times, the majority of businesses will face a crisis. And a personal crisis can handicap a business if you're an owner. For example, if you had a serious accident or an illness, or if your business experienced a flood in the office or a cyber attack, a crisis can shut a business down. I'm going to share with you, I suffered my own personal crisis before the pandemic, just before, in August of 2019. I was moving my son into his dorm and I fell and broke my arm. It began a very difficult 6 months. I couldn't drive for the first 8 weeks, so I couldn't get to my office. I was out of the office for 3 times a week for physical therapy. Then I needed surgery, so there was more rehabilitation. My clients were great, and I was able to meet all of my deadlines, but it forced me to work a lot less, and I suffered about a 20% reduction of my income in 2019, before the pandemic. So we know that there will be crises moving forward, whether it's another pandemic or something else. The question I'm going to answer today is, what can business owners do to manage a crisis? Well, the answer is that business owners can help soften the impact of a crisis on their business by creating a business continuity plan. They need to employ strategies for coping during the crisis. There were many painful lessons from last year, but the most important was that we need to have a plan in place to deal with a crisis. And that's the purpose of a business continuity plan. It allows us to be prepared instead of scared. So what is a business continuity plan? Well, it outlines the procedures and instructions that an organization must follow in the face of a disaster. In addition to trying to prevent a crisis, the goal is to have a plan in place that allows you to continue business operations both before and during disaster recovery. And by creating a plan, businesses can try to protect employees and assets while avoiding or limiting devastating losses. Now, when you create a plan, it must be more than a binder on a shelf. 2020 has taught us that companies need to be agile and effective. Policies and procedures need to be documented and shared with team members with training. A well-written plan will allow your business to act with swiftness and confidence. Last year, the businesses that were the most successful in limiting the impact of COVID were companies that had active crisis management programs in place. Why? Because the owners and employees knew what to do. So I've given you a list here of important things to consider when you are creating a business continuity plan. For example, how will you restore your IT functions? 2020 taught us that technology is our best friend. It allowed businesses to pivot, to directly connect with vendors and customers. It allowed employees to work remotely and keep the business doors open. You need to have a strong IT plan in place that addresses how your business will respond to protect its IT functions. You need to ask, who are the key employees that can assist with the restoration? And what are their roles in performing critical services for the business and connecting with suppliers and customers? How will you restore operations and what equipment or supplies will you need? Another very important point is, do you have a strong support network in place that can assist with the transition? Everyone should have a strong relationship with a lawyer, a banker, an investment advisor, an insurance agent, an accountant, an IT specialist, and a networking group. All these professionals will be able to provide you resources and guidance and play an important role in your business's survival. Your business continuity plan will be tailored to your particular business. If you're a business coach or a banker, an automotive supplier, or you sell clothing, your operations and equipment and customer needs will look very different, right? So for example, I have a client with a medical practice. Last year, I worked with her to create a COVID reopening plan that followed all state guidelines so that her clients could return to face-to-face treatment in her office. Her concerns were very different though from my client who owns a tool manufacturing plant. At the plant, the focus was on obtaining grants and loans for cash flow, PPP loans, and creating safety on the plant floor for employees, and then pivoting to create parts for companies that were now producing hand sanitizer. So your plan will be unique to your industry, but some issues apply uniformly. So we're going to talk about some of the tips and strategies I've helped my clients use when they are facing a crisis. These are all factors that should be included in your business continuity plan. First tip, communication is critical during a crisis. Create a communication plan that provides employees, suppliers, and customers with regular updates. If due to the crisis, you're going to be unable to meet a customer deadline, make a loan or a credit card payment, or pay a supplier, you need to communicate that and work together on a plan of resolution. Most of the time, you'll be able to reach an agreement and maintain the relationship. 2020 taught us relationships matter. The same is true with your employees and your customers. Employees are wondering, am I going to have a job next week? And your customers are asking, is your business going to survive? You want to be able to answer yes and communicate positively to your employees and customers that you have a plan to weather the storm. So provide updates and communicate through your website, social media, and direct communication. This will build loyalty and confidence in your business. Tip number 2, your lease. Paying the rent is a common problem for a business owner in a financial crisis because it's typically one of the biggest fixed expenses. So what can you do? Well, the first thing is start by reading your lease and look for a force majeure provision. Force majeure is a legal clause in contracts that applies when an extraordinary event beyond the control of the parties, like a strike, a riot, an epidemic, or an act of God, prevents a party from fulfilling their obligations. Now, in practice, most force majeure clauses don't excuse a tenant from paying rent entirely, but it will suspend it for the duration of the force majeure event. And the second tip is, in a crisis, you should plan to contact your landlord and ask for an extension of time to pay your rent, or, for example, to throw your missed payments onto the end of the lease. Unless your tenant, your landlord has tenants lined up for your space, which is very unlikely, your landlord doesn't want to lose you as a tenant and they'll work with you. Tip number 3, read your insurance policies and call your agent. Most people don't know what coverage they are carrying. Check to see if you have business interruption or event interruption coverage in your policy. If you do, you may be able to make a COVID-19 claim. Is there property damage? Because a commercial property policy will help cover your damages in case of fire, theft, and natural disaster. And if the crisis is cyber related, cyber insurance coverage will help to cover your costs of getting your business back online. So as part of creating your business continuity plan, make sure you are insuring your business properly to best suit your needs. Number 4, strategy. While your business is slow, now is the time to work on those outstanding collections. Send out notices to all of your overdue accounts. I had several business clients last year who obtained federal PPP loans and used those funds to pay rent and payroll and utilities. That freed up dollars to pay other creditors. So don't assume all businesses are broke. Send your invoices. Strategy 5, track your business inventory and supply needs closely. You may need to slow down your usual orders. If anything is on auto order, be sure you are adjusting to changing demands for your products and services. On the other hand, your business continuity plan may include investing in building stockpiles of other types of inventory that sell quickly with retail customers. Last year, businesses were caught unable to meet customer demand due to delays in China and at ports and with suppliers. So 2020 taught us that a good, solid business plan includes diversifying the supplier base and building up inventory of our business staples. I'm just going to close out of the poll here for me. I'm just trying to, there we go. Okay, moving on. Strategy number 6, review your current business contracts to see if you are vulnerable to legal action or penalties if you are unable to complete an order. What if the crisis is that your inventory supplier has a fire and is shut down, and now you're unable to complete a contract with a customer? By the way, this is another reason why you want to diversify your supplier, but be wary of penalty clauses in your contracts. And if problems arise, communicate with your customer about the problem and look for strategies for resolution to avoid penalties or litigation. Number 7, here's a tip. Review changes in employment law with your attorney and make sure that you are in compliance. For example, with the recent pandemic, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was passed, and suddenly employers with as few as one employee could be required to provide up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave under the act. Avoid legal action and penalties by ensuring you're familiar with changes in law that impact your employees. Strategy 8, make sure you're in compliance with state and federal laws also. Last year in Michigan, you'll recall that the governor issued a multitude of executive orders that every business was required to follow to keep employees and customers safe as businesses reopen. OSHA issued COVID safety regulations too. So why is this critical? Well, first of all, your employees want to feel safe in any workplace. Employees expect business owners to take steps to ensure their well-being and safety. And where businesses fail, employees will report violations to the state, and there are steep fines for violations. Second, your customers need to feel safe in your business. We see evidence of this on Facebook all the time with the pandemic. People comment on whether employees are wearing a face mask at a store. And if there isn't a mask, they won't go back. And conversely, when they see that safety precautions are in place, customers will praise and support that business online. So it's important to follow state and federal guidelines if any are in effect that relate to the crisis. Okay, tip number 9, prioritize your employee and tax obligations during a crisis to minimize future liability. Make all of your tax and payroll and healthcare payments. Naturally, you want to avoid personal liability for unpaid taxes and IRS penalties. And unpaid wages can lead to employee claims filed against your business with the Michigan Wage and Hour Division. So businesses need their employees in order to operate, especially during a crisis. So make them a priority. 10, credit lines. The most valuable business lesson we learned in 2020 is the importance of having liquid cash at all times. As you are preparing to weather a storm, cash is invaluable. So build your cash reserves now as part of your plan. This is your safety net. As the economy is recovering, consider applying for a line of credit now from your local bank or credit union. That line of credit can help sustain you through another crisis by providing liquidity. Next, strategy 11, find out if there are federal loans or grants available during your crisis. With this pandemic, many business owners receive paycheck protection loans, SBA economic injury disaster loans and advances, Michigan small business relief loans and grants, and I post about new grants that are coming out all the time with the state of Michigan. Do your homework on financial relief. 12, keep your foot on the gas with marketing. This is a great strategy. During this downturn in the economy, expand your market reach online. You may be working from home in your sweatpants, but don't take your foot off the gas. Take actions now that will pay off both sooner and later. Now, I've given you a couple of links, resources for drafting a business continuity plan, and I will put those into our chat. So that takes us to number 14, which is my final piece of advice for you. That is, accept the situation. While we would all like for the crisis we're facing to be temporary, whether it's a broken arm or the COVID-19 virus, the truth is a crisis will likely continue to affect our lives for quite some time. And if there is one critical lesson to be learned from 2020, it's that complacency has a cost. It won't be another 100 years until the next pandemic or global emergency. It might not even be another 100 days. Above all, COVID has shown us the value of taking emergency planning and crisis management seriously. So I'm going to leave you this morning on a positive note. A crisis could leave your company in a better place. More than 40% of those businesses from the Pricewaterhouse survey said that they were in a better place post-crisis, with some even reporting revenue growth. The factors that helped those who came out stronger included being able to make decisions quickly and having a well-tested crisis plan in place. So take the time now to create a business continuity plan to prevent and plan for your next crisis that your business may endure. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. I'm very interested in hearing about personal crises that other people experience and how you overcame them. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Leigh. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
As you can see, Linda, what's her face? Brenda is sharing the results of the poll up here on the